What's going on, family? Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. We're going to continue with 100 years of world championship fights. We're in the middle of 1913. In the last video, we left off May 13th, 1913. Jack Johnson, who was the world heavyweight champion of the world, he was charged with violating the Mann Act, transporting young girls across state lines for immoral purposes. While Jack Johnson didn't create that crime, nor did he commit it. Mann Act was designed for transporting young girls and turning them to prostitutes. So the charge was immoral purposes. It was not for a specific race, nor was it for a specific individual. It was gathering evidence to charge an individual or a committee of people to grab young girls and transport them across state lines for immoral purposes, for prostitution purposes. That's not what Jack Johnson has ever done. There's a young lady who was a minor, but he was married to her. Her name was Belle Shriver. And they were married and crossed the state line before that law was even created. Well, unfortunately for Jack Johnson, June 4th, 1913, Judge George Compartier sentenced Jack Johnson for 1 year and a day, and his bail was $1,000, which Jack Johnson would pay. June 24th, Eddie Campi defeats Charles Deluxe, 20 rounds, Vernon, California, for the European recognition of the Bantamweight Championship belt. July 1st, 1913, Jack Johnson had flew Chicago, and he sailed to Montreal. And he would eventually relocate to France. Jack Johnson will be away from the United States for 7 years. July 4th, 1913, Willie Ritchie knocks out Mexican Joe Rivers in 11 rounds, San Francisco, California, to retain the World Lightweight Championship belt. July 15th, Kid Williams knocked out Charles Deluxe, 15 rounds in Vernon, California. August 8th, Ed Gunbo Smith knocked out Fireman Jim Flynn, 5 rounds, New York. August 22nd, Jess Willard had knocked out William Bull Young, 11 rounds, Vernon, California. Bull Young would die in a hospital, and Jess Willard would be charged, and he would be sent into prison for manslaughter. But Jess Willard would get off the hook on that one, and he would keep his heavyweight championship belt. September 16th, 1913, Johnny Kilbane defeats Jimmy Walsh, 12 rounds, Boston, Massachusetts, to retain his featherweight championship belt. October 11th, George Chip knocks out Frank Klaus, 6 rounds, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He wins the middleweight championship belt. George Chip was the brother of Joe Chip, and I'm going to get into him a little further on to the series. I had mentioned that Joe Chip would be in the corner of Jack Dempsey in 1919 when he fought Jess Willard. Would also be one of two men to knock out Harry Greb. October 11th, same day, George Carpentier defeats Jeff Smith, 20 rounds in Paris, France. Jeff Smith was from Brooklyn, New York. He would relocate to Manhattan, Harlem, New York, and he would train with Johnny Wilson. And Jeff Smith would eventually relocate to New Jersey. He had 7 fights with Harry Greb. Phenomenal fighter was Jeff Smith. I'll get more into his career as the series moves on. November 17th, Ed Gunbo Smith defeats Sam Langford, 12 rounds, Boston, Massachusetts. December 8th, George Carpentier knocks out Bombardier Billy Wales, 1 round, London, England, to retain the European Heavyweight Championship belt. December 19th, Jack Johnson suffers a broken arm. His left arm would be dislocated. And the only fight he would have since leaving the United States was against Battling Jim Johnson. Paris, France. Be the first heavyweight championship bout with 2 black fighters. Battling Jim Johnson. Jack Johnson. And that's unfortunate, because Sam Langford had defeated Battling Jim Johnson 9 out of 11 fights that they would have. Sam Langford would never lose to Battling Jim Johnson, excuse me. But Jim Johnson would get the shot with Jack Johnson. December 20th, Joe Jeanette defeats Sam Langford, 20 rounds in Paris, France. December 23rd, George Chip knocks out Frank Klaus in 5 rounds. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to retain the middleweight championship belt. December 29th, Jess Willard knocks out George Boyer, 9 rounds, New Haven, Connecticut. His official name was George Rondell, but they called him George Boyer. And Jess Willard would get that opportunity. Somewhat ranked number 3, if you will. Getting closer to Jack Johnson's title. November 1914. January 1st, Ed Gunbo Smith knocks out Arthur Pursley in 15 rounds. Daly City, California. And he would defend his White Hope Heavyweight Championship belt. January 1st, Eddie McCarthy knocks out Dave Smith, 1 round, Sydney, Australia. And he would gain the Australian recognition of the middleweight championship belt. January 1st, Waldemar Holberg defeats Ray Bronson. Ray Bronson was a very good fighter. 20 rounds, Melbourne, Australia, to win the vacant welterweight championship belt. January 24th, Tom McCormick wins on a foul over Waldemar Holberg. 6 rounds, Melbourne, Australia, to win a welterweight championship strap. January 26th, Percy Jones defeats Bill Lockberry, 20 rounds, London, England, to win a flyweight championship belt. January 31st, Kid Williams knocks out Eddie Campy, 12 rounds, Vernon, California, to win a partial recognition, the bantamweight championship belt. January 31st, future heavyweight champion, Jersey Joe Walcott. His name was Armand Raymond Cream. He would be born. And Joe Walcott would eventually become world heavyweight champion in 1951 when he knocked out Eddie Charles with a beautiful left hook. The following year, he would lose his title to Rocky Marciano, 13th round, what was considered as the perfect punch. We'll get more into that fight. 1952. Great fights in the 1900s. May 15th. Joe Simons knocks out Percy Jones, 18 rounds, and Plymouth, England, to win the flyweight championship belt. June 8th, Kid Williams knocks out Johnny Colin, 3 rounds, Vernon, California, to win a bantamweight championship title. June 13th, Sam McVeigh knocks out Arthur Perthley in 4 rounds, Melbourne, Australia. June 15th, Jack Dillon, they call him the Giant Slayer, defeats Bob Moha, 12 rounds, Montana, to retain the light heavyweight championship belt. June 27th, Jack Johnson defeats Frank Moran, 20 rounds. George Carpentier will be the referee for that fight. Fight took place in Paris. He retained his heavyweight championship belt. July 7th, Freddie Welch defeats Willie Ritchie, 20 rounds, London, England, to win a lightweight championship crown. July 10th, George Carpentier defeats Ed Gunbo Smith on a foul, 6 rounds, London, England, to win the White Hope heavyweight championship title. July 26th, George Carpentier defeats Kid Jackson on a foul, 4 rounds. Fight took place in France. October 20th, Sam Langford knocks out Ed Gunbo Smith, 3 rounds, in Boston, Massachusetts. November 26th, Sam Langford, down 3 times in the first and second rounds, but he gets back and knocks out Harry Wells in 14 rounds, Vernon, California. That was one of the most impressive victories of Sam Langford's career. November 28th, Mick King defeats Jeff Smith, 20 rounds, Sydney, Australia, to win the Australian recognition of the middleweight championship belt. December 18th, in the last scheduled 20-round bout, California, lightweight Eddie McCoy and Red Watson fight to a draw. San Francisco, California. The bout ends at 11:30 p.m. At midnight, California's 4-round rules would be over. Incredible. December 20th, Sam McVeigh defeats Harry Wells in 20 rounds, New Orleans. December 28th, Jeff Smith defeats Mick King in 20 rounds, Sydney, Australia. He regains the Australian recognition as middleweight champion. I'm going to end this video ending in 1914. Look out for 1915, 100 years of world championship fights. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Thanks for hanging in there with me. And stay with me as we go through the entire century of world championship fights. Every weight division. Every country. Every decade. We'll go to the 20s and the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, 1970s. Ali Foreman and Ali Frazier. Ruben Oliveras. Lexus Aguiles. We'll go to the 1980s. Salvador Sanchez and Fredo Gomez. Roberto Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard. Thomas the Hitman Hearns. Pepino Cuevas. Wilfred Benitez. Ray Leonard, 1979. On the same card, Hagler. Vito Anafirmo. We'll go to the 1990s with Roy Jones, Bernard Executioner Hopkins, Vander Holyfields, Iron Mike Tyson, Pernell Whitaker, Chavez. We're going to go through it all right here on the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Peace. Shout out to my brother Curtis Anderson.